this video, we'll be showing how to connect to BrightServer and configure BrightServer at runtime through the servers window of the BrightBuilder environment. So here I am running BrightBuilder, and I've got an empty project that I'm going to use to run the BrightServer now. So the server is up and running, and I can connect to the server and configure the BrightServer in the server's window. So the first thing I need to do is add the server. I'm just going to add the local host running that I've just started up a second ago. I can open up my tree and I can right click on that server instance and connect to it. I'm going to use the admin account. The orange badge appears when I'm connected. I can disconnect, deploy configuration, and browse deployed applications. I'm going to quickly just demonstrate that one point, the deployed projects. Here are the list of projects that are currently deployed to the BrightServer. So I've actually deployed this one a while ago, and I can even click on a particular version. So in the top half of this dialog are the projects, and the bottom half, so I click on a project and the bottom half appears all the versions of that project. So BrightServer is actually able to act as an application source repository for all the different versions that have been deployed through time. I can even click on Get Selected Version and save that application, which will basically save it as a BSP file downloaded from the BrightServer. So what we're going to focus on in this video is the configuration of BrightServer. Under the configuration tree are all the options that I can configure at runtime: server, licenses, and users. So this video will go through these three nodes in detail. First of all, when I double click on one of these items, the first thing that the BrightBuilder needs to do is to actually download the configuration that's currently running from the BrightServer that's connected to. As well as downloading, the other option I have is I can load that from file, and we'll come back to saving loading from file in a little while later. So the first thing I'm going to do is download the live running version of the configuration. I get a message from the server to say that this has been successfully downloaded. So these are all the settings that the BrightServer on localhost is currently running with. I can see the port, the secure port, and the remote tracing server port. These are the three TCP/IP ports that the BrightServer is listening on, and that can be configured using this window. Authentication type, some advanced settings regarding data compression and the synchronization of the system clock, even the timeout. The session timeout is how long the server will wait to time out a session. So basically, it's how long it will wait for a client to come back to it for. So if a client doesn't come back within 300 seconds, this configuration will set the BrightServer to close that session out. The next settings that I can look at here are the data size limits. So the actual number of database records that will be sent in a single packet to the clients. We call these data packets chunks. At the default setting is 64 database records per chunk. A chunk means that is the turnaround side, the turnaround packet that will be sent. So in between each two-way handshake between the client and the server. Some of the things that I'm talking about here are a little bit technical and a little bit advanced. We find that most of the users of BrightServer will just take the default settings and run with them just fine. Continuing on down the data size limits, the maximum size in kilobytes. We don't want to maybe send too much more than 256 kilobytes per packet. So that's a quarter of a meg. And the maximum number of records is capped at 200. This application distribution directory setting here is a legacy setting for old servers. It's kept in BrightBuilder 6 here, so that BrightBuilder 6 can be used with older versions of BrightServer. And finally, my user activity is set on, so I can log the user activity, which is used in the monitoring section. There are two tabs to the server configuration tab. So the settings we've just been through. The next side of it is the system databases. So when BrightServer is running, it's actually running a series of system databases behind the scenes. By default, this will be checked to just run the default configuration for the system databases. And again, most of the time, most of our users will be able to run with these default settings without any problem at all. But just to go through them in detail quickly, the system database, as it says here, an internal system database that contains specific settings for data. This we find in practice that this will only be changed when an extremely large deployment of over 1,000 users on the one server is being used. The next database is the runtime configuration database. So the configuration that I'm actually talking about, that we've got in this video right now, the server, the licenses, and the users, are all being kept in the runtime configuration database. And almost all the time, the default database is ample to handle this task. Finally, we have a separate database for the runtime statistics. So these are some of the client logs, that mostly it's the user activity logs, which we just looked at in the last window. If I wanted to make a change here, I can untick this, go to set up another database, and now I can support any of these databases. So if you have a database that you want to use on 2008, for example, you just plug in the details here, and that will take over from the default database. So I'm going to leave that back, check that back to how it was. If I wanted to make a change, I'll just make the simplest change I can think of here is just turn the logging activity off, for example. Any change that I make is then remembered in this window, but we need to send these configuration changes to BrightServer. And I'll do that by right-clicking on the configuration and selecting Upload. What will happen now is BrightBuilder will contact BrightServer, and BrightServer will come back and confirm that these are the changes that are made. So BrightServer is telling us the differences between the configuration that we've got to send to it and the configuration that's currently running, and it's detected that one change that I made, which was turning off the flag for the user activity. So if I go ahead and select Proceed, that has instantly changed that setting on the running BrightServer, the local host, which is this BEP running in my BrightServer environment, developer environment. So that's the server. The next piece in the puzzle is the licenses. As is demonstrated in the installing the device licenses video, this is where we can add and delete licenses. To add a license, I just right click and say add license there. I browse and select my file, enter the serial number and the description, and click finish. I can also delete the license, and it will turn red when I'm deleting it. Then I can upload the change, proceed, and the license is taken away. The next window are users. I can add a new user and turn green. I can change a user, it will turn blue, and I can delete a user, it will turn red. And again, I make those changes. I get the verification of what the changes are, and they're made. All of these changes that are being made are affecting the server in the runtime, so I'm able to affect the runtime server settings. That concludes this video for how to configure BrightServer at runtime using BrightBuilder. Be sure to check out our other how-to videos at brightexpress.com.